Hello ladies and gentlemen, it is Tyler here, back once again with another episode of Assassin's Creed The Truth. Now this episode I wanted to actually have a bit more fun with a crazy, wild theory, and I know from the thumbnail you're probably wondering, Tyler, what the fuck you're talking about. Now, you need to hear me out here, because it's not exactly what the thumbnail means when I say Desmond equals Subject 16. It's a bit more to it and a bit more complicated than that simple statement. Obviously, Subject 16 is a person, a character in Assassin's Creed. Clay Kaczmarek, he was the subject before Desmond Miles in Abstergo Industries in Rome. He left all those blood messages on the walls. He's sent messages in certain ways to Desmond. That's without a doubt something that's happened. Obviously, he's a person in Revelations. We talk to him, he's a figure, he's a guy. There's a whole DLC where you learn about his story. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm talking about specifically moments in which we think we're talking to 16, and maybe in fact we're talking to somebody else. Now I'm talking about the Brotherhood truth, and I've talked about this several times in the Truth series itself. This is a key component to the remaining mysteries in Assassin's Creed, where supposedly in Brotherhood Subject 16 leaves behind messages to Desmond Miles, and in the end talks to him in an Animus White Room failsafe program. Super interesting stuff is said, and I don't think it's Subject 16. At least, it's possible it's not Subject 16, and it could very well be Subject 17 himself, Desmond Miles, from the future, travelling through time, well, not travelling through time, at least projecting himself through time to speak to a past Desmond, sending warnings. Now I'm going to talk about several reasons why that could be the case, points to prove, as well as why, of course, it isn't Subject 16, even if it may not be Desmond Miles. So, let's get right into this fun-filled discussion where we get to talk about crazy shit, and you guys tell me I need to go to rehab because clearly I've been on too much drugs. So why isn't it Subject 16 in the Brotherhood Truth sequence? The first one being there's still a lot of questions left to answer from this speech as it is, because if it was directly meant to be to Desmond for what he's quote-unquote destined to achieve, you'd think that he'd actually say something that would be relevant to the Desmond series, not something that's going to be affecting other characters that aren't even listening to the message. Now I'm talking about in Revelations when he brings up Eve, the key her DNA.
In Eden, find Eve. The key, her DNA.
When he brings up in Eden, things like that clearly are still unexplained and leave many questions, as I've talked about in several other episodes of this series. His attitude in the whole sequence of Revelations, where he's talking to Desmond, is so different to the way he talks to Desmond in these truth sequences. He's not flustered, he's not in pain, he's not trying to give all these crazy informations. He just kind of is there, and he asks Desmond questions, and Desmond doesn't really ask anything back. It's very confusing, and even in amongst the whole Lost Archives DLC, Clay doesn't explain all these crazy things that we see, like Eve, like in Eden, like all these crazy key components that he's talking about that may affect Desmond in the future. Another main one is the way he blocks answers towards his identity throughout the Truth sequence. The first thing Desmond says to him in both Brotherhood and Revelations is 16, question mark.
Just walk right past me. 16?
Art.
Voice.
Subject 16?
Now in Revelations he answers, oh, they didn't tell you my name? Which we later find out is Clay Kaczmarek. He responds obviously accepting who he's talking to. Whereas in the Brotherhood, he answers very strangely.
Yes. Yes. Subject 17.
Now I didn't feel like he was answering and saying yes, Subject 17, I am Subject 16. He just goes yes, Subject 17, in a way that I'd point out is almost like it is Subject 17 and he misheard him saying Subject 16, question mark. He goes yes, Subject 17, like he's answering yes I am Subject 17.
Subject 16?
Yes. Yes. Subject 17.
That's the first thing that got me thinking about this whole thing. I'm like, hang on a second, that's a weird first answer to give. But you think about why this could be, or why it could be, in fact, points to prove that it is, in fact, Desmond Miles talking to past Desmond Miles, giving him all these warnings to maybe change the future that this Subject 17 has already lived. First example is he knows about a son. Now again, this isn't anything that we can confirm yet, this is again just a theory, but there is a possibility that Desmond Miles has a son, and in the truth, it mentioned the son, your son.
The son. Your son.
Spelt S-O-N, as in, you have a son, talking about Desmond. Now I don't think Clay Kazmarek knows about a son that Desmond doesn't. It's more than likely Desmond knows about some sort of son he has, and he's pointing to himself that he might be a key towards some sort of future salvation. And originally when playing Brotherhood, you wouldn't really know. When he says your son, you'd be like, well, he could just be, a bit crazy and loopy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Now that we see these rumors of Desmond Miles having a son, it kind of brings the question up of, well, the only person who could know would be Desmond more than Subject 16 himself. So is it possible again? Is it another point that it could be Subject 17 talking to Subject 17? In a lot of ways knows what will happen to Desmond. He says it's already too late.
Everything you hope to become, everything you hold dear, it's already gone.
Explain. Please.
It's like he knows what's happening, he knows what's coming. Like he's lived the fact that he sacrificed himself and died, and maybe saw what Juno is capable of. He knows all these plans that are going forward. He knows the horrors that await the future. So he's trying to somehow send a warning to past Desmond for the hopes that this Desmond can understand and change things. Yet it doesn't appear that he does. He also possibly is trying to warn against Juno. She is not who you think she is.
No time. It is far later than you know. Too late to save them.
Who?
She is not who you think she is.
Now, is he warning about Juno? Where Juno acts like she's trying to save the world, but Desmond sees through this now, after the fact of his passing and him sacrificing himself where Juno was locked away. He knows in the grey, with his brain locked away in there with her, possibly what Juno's planning. All the things Juno could do. He's trying to warn Desmond again about the future horrors that may await if he doesn't alter his course. Now, he would know about things like this from being in the grey with Juno. Now, back in Assassin's Creed Unity, there's messages from Juno in the database in which you see these hints that Subject 16 and 17 are there with her somehow.
Now I travel the vast corridors of your machines, adrift here within the grave.
Now, another point is also Eve. This whole Eve factor, and we know someone like that is a very far back in a DNA line, and really the best possible way to have that access to DNA that's that far back is people with the triple helix, like a sage, that we can unlock genetic memories further back than we've ever imagined through an animus. And we know that Desmond's son is a sage, and this may be something again that Desmond knows in the future through the grey that he's trying to warn past Desmond about, seeing if he can again alter that course. It's another one of those little hints that we're only finding out about from the things in the future. Now, the main point, the biggest question you'd be asking yourself, Tyler, what the fuck are you talking about? Sure, those are crazy points you can kind of fit in yourself, but how's Desmond going back in time and talking to past Desmond? That doesn't even make any sense. I thought so too. But when you realise, how does Minerva and Juno alter the calculations of existence and travel through time, or not exactly travel through time, at least speak to the past and future? Through the eye. This eye we talked about in the past episode of Assassin's Creed The Truth. It's what Juno and Minerva used to speak through time, and it's also what helps save the world itself in the Grand Temple. Juno was locked away in one eye, and Minerva built another to talk to Ezio to get to Desmond. Now, the thing is, what did Desmond use to save the world? What did Desmond touch to sacrifice himself? The freaking eye! Now, does that mean that Desmond somehow, even if he is in the grey, or at least for the second that he's in that pain, has the ability to use that, since he is an ancestor of Adam and he does have high concentration of first civilization DNA, he can somehow use it, harness it, and speak through time to a past Desmond.
Yes. Yes. Subject 17.
You're dead. I saw your blood.
No time. It is far later than you know. Too late to save them.
Who?
She is not who you think she is. Everything you hope to become, everything you hold dear, it's already gone.
Explain. Please.
Eden. In Eden, find Eve. The key, her DNA.
Tell me.
I cannot. The sun, your son, too weak. Must replenish energy.
Don't go.
I am with you till the end. Find me in the darkness.
Sending these warnings to alter past Desmond's course with the knowledge he's unlocked from the Grey, and he even says throughout, too weak, and he seems to be flustered, in a lot of pain. If you're still doubting it, just for a bit of fun, imagine that it is Subject 17, and then listen to what he says. In that context, that it's Subject 17 talking to Subject 17, it'll blow your mind, it really will. Now, don't get me wrong, this is still a wild, crazy theory. There's a lot of evidence against it, even though I've brought a lot of points here, that there's possibilities. Now, do I think that this is what Ubisoft has planned? No. If anything, this is something I'm putting out there, because there's the chance that Ubisoft could totally retcon this and make it to be Desmond all along, whereas at the time, they were just like, oh no, it's Subject 16. But all this stuff's happened, they're like, oh, what if we change it? And all along with Subject 17. They've figured it out later. It's not something they planned. Now, there's plenty of reasons that it could just be Subject 16 talking to 17 like we all are told originally. Now, it is the same voice actor as 16 in Assassin's Creed 2, but that voice then changes in Revelation. So again, you could retcon it and say, well, this Animus voice is just the automatic one you hear. Whereas until you meet Clay, that's where you hear his real voice. Until you meet Desmond, that's when you hear Desmond's real voice. There's ways you could retcon it to fit that mold. But again, it's the same voice actor. So originally that's what Ubisoft is saying they've planned, as it is supposed to be Subject 16 ongoing, that they just change when you finally get the Clay Casmeric reveal. And at the same time, most of the speech still does relate to Desmond. Because when you look at the warnings that are left there, sure, we don't still know about the Eve situation. There's still questions there, but things like she's not who you think she is could very well be talking about Lucy, who later in that game, you kill Lucy by Juno's control and find out that Lucy was a betrayer, and we know that Clay knew this. So for all we know, that warning wasn't for Juno, it was for Lucy. Another main quote and point he says at the end of the speech is, "Find me in the darkness." The Black Room of the Animus, which is where you find Subject 16 in Assassin's Creed Revelations. So there's plenty of reasons you'd be like, well, it's obviously Subject 16. So what I'm really trying to say isn't that, yes, this is something Ubisoft has planned all along, it's Subject 17 talking to Subject 17. I don't actually think that. I think with all this stuff that's happened, you could change it to say that it all along was Subject 17 talking to Subject 17, sending these warnings, because Desmond's still in the grey and he failed to send the warning properly. Therefore, Desmond still ended up reliving that future of sacrificing himself, Juno getting out, but his son's there. So it's almost a way you could change it around and show what Desmond has tried to do, and that Desmond's still a figure, even though he's not a main character anymore, but a figure to be a part of the future of the modern day, with his brain maybe still locked away in the grey with Juno, that his son potentially as a future character could access. But who knows, again, it is just a theory, and a crazy wild theory at that in the end I'd like to see maybe brought to fruition in some way. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the theory. Obviously, whether you'd want it to be something that they changed around and added in, it was all along Desmond Miles, Subject 17, talking to himself. Do you think it is a super interesting theory that could be actually likely itself? Is it something that gets you excited and you're like, oh my god, the possibilities there, and there is actually some real evidence to support it all along. Or you can sit there and be like, Tyler, you're a fucking moron. It's just Subject 16 talking to Desmond. What are you doing? Please get some sleep and think about your life. Now, that's fair enough too, I'd understand that. But it's just a fun, crazy, wild theory episode of Assassin's Creed The Truth, and I appreciate you guys spending the time to watch it. Thank you again. I'll see you next time.